The Keystone Center for Charter Change would like you to know more about an important topic: how special education is paid for in charter schools and why that method is flawed. School districts and charter schools are funded in Pennsylvania very differently. Our school districts are funded with a combination of local, state, and federal dollars. You may not know that most of the funding that charter schools receive comes directly from school districts, and that impacts you, the local taxpayer. When a student leaves the district to attend a charter school, the local school district is required to send a tuition payment to the charter for each student enrolled. That seems fair, right? Wrong, because the funding equation is unfair. Tuition payments to charter schools are calculated using an outdated formula created by the General Assembly in 1997, and it has never been changed. Remember 1997, when the movies Titanic and Men in Black came out? That's how long it's been since this formula was first adopted. This means that students enrolled at the same charter school are being compensated at different tuition rates, even though they are attending the same school and receiving the same educational offerings. This creates wide discrepancies and overpayments in the tuition dollars funneled to charter schools. And remember, that tuition is your taxpayer dollars. In the case of charter tuition for special education students, it becomes even more imbalanced and unfair. For special education programs and the payments to school districts, the state uses a formula that considers the number of low, moderate, and high-need students and other factors to target funds more accurately to schools with the highest special education costs. However, this is not the case for charter schools. Charters are paid using the old formula based on the school district's expenses for special education, and not on what the charter school spends to educate its students with disabilities. This just doesn't make sense, especially because school districts educate nearly all of the students with disabilities with higher needs who require the most extensive special education services, those costing more than $25,000 per student. Consider that in the 2017-18 school year, school districts educated more than 95% of the higher needs students who require the most extensive special education services. In comparison, more than 94% of all charter school special education students were educated for less than $25,000. Yet, because the charter school tuition calculation is based on the school district's expenses, the average special education tuition rate paid to charters by districts was more than $24,000. This funding method allows charter schools to frequently receive more money than needed to educate a special education student, because it provides them with the same funding for each student with a disability, regardless of the severity of that student's disability. Let's look at the data from the 2014-15 school year, which is the latest year for which the state has made this information available. For that year, we know that school districts paid charter schools over $100 million more in special education tuition payments than the charter's reported spending to provide special education services. Because charter schools don't have to use special education tuition solely for special education purposes, these millions of dollars in overpayments become profit for charter schools. It's time for the General Assembly to change this outdated, unbalanced formula. In fact, it's overdue. This broken system hurts school districts and taxpayers by misallocating education resources at a time when every dollar of education funding is so critical. We need a fairer special education funding system that is tied more accurately to the actual needs and costs to educate a child enrolled in a charter school. Reach out to your local legislator and ask them to fix this problem. To learn more about charter school funding and how to contact your legislator, check out the Keystone Center for Charter Change at www.pacharterchange.org and sign up to receive the daily newsletter.